Wednesday evening, folks. Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandajis here with you tonight. It is Wednesday, June the 17th. We're about roughly 2.5 weeks into the hurricane season. And this is Hurricane Hub Live, where you'll find us every weeknight at 8 p.m. We're going to get deep into the weeds on the Atlantic season. Of course, we've got Arthur out there, brand new name storm to let you know about. And out in the Pacific, if there's anything cooking out there as well. So let's get to it. Tonight on Hurricane Hub Live, we are getting into Arthur. Arthur was born at the 11 o'clock advisory today out of potential tropical cyclone 1. You remember last when we talked on Monday, it was Invest 90L, so it did intensify, become our first named storm of the season. But aside from that, the rest of the Atlantic basin is quiet. The Pacific is also a snooze fest right now. There's nothing going on out there either, so we're going to focus mostly on Arthur. So Arthur started as a tropical disturbance. In fact, it did start as Tropical Storm Christina in the eastern Pacific. Now, it fell apart mostly. It's lost its mid-level and low-level circulation, but the energy overall did survive over Mexico. So we were a tropical disturbance. Then we became Invest 90L. Monday, I think that was, or even Sunday, they named it. Then it became potential tropical cyclone 1. Now, this is issued when it's not quite yet a tropical depression or a tropical storm, but it is already impacting populated areas, and this does unlock the National Hurricane Center to issue watches and warnings pertaining to said potential tropical cyclone. Now, this is a relatively new term. It was started by the National Hurricane Center in 2017, the year of Harvey, the year of Maria, big year in the Atlantic, and the first system to be tagged as potential tropical cyclone 1, really the first ever, went on to become Tropical Storm Brett in the Atlantic in 2017. So we went from there. We had a closed circulation. Winds were strong enough that we hopped right over tropical depression, became tropical storm. That's where we got the name of Arthur. Climbed the pyramid of tropical terminology. All right, so Arthur's on the list now as a tropical storm. Not going to get much stronger than that. It peaked at 45-mile-per-hour winds. It's already weakened as of the 8 o'clock advisory. You can see the numbers here, down to 40-mile-per-hour winds. Remember, a tropical storm is 39 miles per hour or greater. And I want to zoom in close here because this has been a very interesting storm, a little bit of an odd duck. It came out south of Corpus Christi, moved over water for about 100 miles, moved inland over Brazoria County in southeast Texas, and then moved northeast and is now sitting over Galveston and Galveston Bay, just southeast of Houston now. So it's barely been over open water, yet we still have a tropical system. Okay, and also notice, even if we go back here, notice how lopsided, asymmetrical this storm is. That's because this is a symptom of extremely strong wind shear. Now I'm showing you wind speeds here at 200 millibars, or roughly 35,000 feet up. And you've got wind screaming in from the west. And what that's doing is that's tilting the entire system, dislocating all, and I mean literally all of the convection, well to the east of the center. So the low-level center is exposed. That is what's being plotted here on the National Hurricane Center updates every hour on where it's been moving. All the activity really has been offshore for now, and some of those plumes are lifting up and over southern Louisiana, up into New Orleans. Now, I don't want to downplay the fact that this has brought some significant impacts to a large chunk of southeast Texas. They've had days of tropical downpours and lots of flooding there, and now this is pushing east, and we're looking at days of heavy rainfall in the deep south along the Gulf Coast there. So wind shear explained here, normal hurricane flow, they're vertical engines, right? So they build from the surface aloft vertically. And when you get wind shear that's strong aloft, that's a change in wind speed and direction with height, that tilts the system so it's not able to ventilate properly. And it dissipates the storm. That's why we've been talking about with an El Nino, strong El Nino developing here on the Atlantic Basin as we get towards the peak of the season, increases the amount of wind shear over the majority of the Atlantic Basin. So any storms that do try to get going will end up looking like what Arthur's looking like now. They're going to run into that wind shear, and once they build up some convection, it's all going to be blown right off the side there, and we're going to see a significant reduction in the strength of these tropical systems as they go forward, if they do, in fact, run into that heavy wind shear. All right, the hurricane hunters did get a nice mission out of this, though. They did fly out of Keesler Air Force Base out in Biloxi, Mississippi, and flew into the storm earlier today. They did find some winds. Again, these are wind gusts in the thunderstorm activity well displaced from the center. Typically, in a normal tropical storm or hurricane, you would find the strongest of the winds closer to the center, where you have the lowest of the pressures. With all of these storms kind of dislocated off to the east, we're finding some of the stronger winds and some of these thunderstorm wind gusts, close to 60 miles per hour there. And you got to see the central pressure down to 1,002 millibars. Right now, the pressure is sitting at 1,000 millibars based on the 8 o'clock advisory. Moving off to the northeast at 8 miles an hour, not particularly that fast, and it's not going to be around for much longer. It probably won't even spend a full 24 hours as a named tropical storm. Now that it's mostly over land, we're going to see this dissipate rather quickly down to a tropical depression. Then eventually, just the remnant moisture will be picked up from an inbound cold front to the north and spread off to the east and northeast. And that's going to become quite a little bit of a problem for flooding in the deep south over the coming days. Now, I want to show you the ensemble plots here of the spaghetti models that we show you quite often here in terms of tracks for tropical systems. Now, notice a big chunk of these kind of cut off here as they're southeast of Memphis and well to the west of Atlanta. Those are those particular ensemble model runs. By the way, I have the Euro here, the GFS, and the Canadian model ensembles all plotted, those that are seeing the storm. The ones that cut off here see the storm dissipating enough that it no longer has a central area of pressure, so they're not tracking anything anymore. So it cuts it off there, just the remnant moisture gets shoved to the east-northeast. Several other ensemble blends hold at least some semblance of the residual circulation, moving through North Georgia into South Carolina and southern portions of North Carolina. Most of this scoots it by to the south of us here in Hampton Roads, but close enough, likely still going to get in on some of that wet weather getting into the end of the week. And wet weather, yeah, there's going to be a lot of it. Look at the forecast rainfall here over the next several days. This is the European plot here showing as much as another foot of rain in southern portions of Alabama and over into Mississippi as well, half a foot. A good portion of southeastern portions of Louisiana, New Orleans area, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches of rain. So flash flooding going to be a problem there. In fact, the long-range outlook here, the Weather Prediction Center putting out the flood potential. Now, you know how we talk about severe weather? It's got a 5-tiered system. Well, the flood potential is a 4-tiered system. So level 1 being, yeah, there's going to be some heavy rain, but not going to cause that much in terms of widespread flooding. Level 2, level 3, and level 4. Well, the reds that you're seeing here is going to be the level 3 out of 4. So highly likely that there's going to be flash flooding instances here in southeastern Louisiana, southern Mississippi here through tomorrow morning. And then we go out another 24 hours, Thursday morning through Friday morning, and notice that spreads through most of central and southern Alabama, southern portions of Mississippi, and now getting into central and western portions of Georgia as well. Doesn't end there as we get into Friday morning through Saturday morning, still showing that level 3 out of 4 over southern Alabama for the flash flooding threat. So days on end here of heavy rain. And, you know, they need the rain in the deep south. Drought conditions still there, but again, all of that at once still going to lead to that flooding potential. Now, I like climatology. I like going back and seeing what past named storms did. So let's go back and look at past Arthurs. There's been 7 occurrences of tropical storm or Hurricane Arthurs on record. Now, just take a look at the map here. So we have our newest Arthur that's right here. It's unusual. Never had one in the Gulf before. Only had one in the far western Caribbean, 2 others that came out of the main development region, actually, moved one into the Caribbean, one into the southwest Atlantic. But look at this, 4 out of 7 had almost identical storm tracks forming north of the Bahamas, tracking along the contour of the southeast coastline, and then pushing off to the northeast, most of which not making landfall. However, in 2014, the strongest iterants that we had of Arthur in 2014 was a Cat 2. And that did make landfall. If you've lived in this area on the southeast coast for a while, you remember Arthur, 4th of July weekend, made landfall over the Outer Banks, right over Nag's Head as a Cat 2 in the middle of the night. I was there for that. I remember this very distinctly. And then Jim Cantori was there as well. And he did live reports from there, and I saw him, so it was pretty cool. But that then moved off the coastline there, cleared out rather fast, and folks came right back in and refilled all the hotels and enjoyed the rest of their holiday weekend there. But just interesting there, it's almost like atmospheric memory that 4 of 7 times we've had a tropical storm or Hurricane Arthur, it was almost identical storm tracks. I find that very interesting. All right, out there in the Atlantic Basin, sea surface temperature anomalies. What you're looking at here is anything yellow, orange is going to be sea surface temperatures that are above normal for this point in the year. Blue is going to be below normal. A lot more above normal readings than we're seeing below normal. So the warm water is certainly there. Not as widespread or as above average as we've seen in past years, but we'll see where it takes us. And then look at the Eastern Pacific. We're just cooking. You can see the El Nino starting to get cranking and very, very evident there on the equatorial Pacific waters off the coast of South America, and lots of warm water in most of the northeast Pacific here. That's going to allow for probably a little bit above average activity in the eastern Pacific basin. Now, how about the dust situation? Again, at this point in the season, we see plumes of dust coming off the coast of Africa, picked up by the trade winds and pushed all the way off to the west. This blocks out the sun, tends to cool the ocean temperatures if it's a thick enough plume. And also, of course, is dry air in the mid-levels, and that just chokes off any storms from getting going. So right now, we've got the dust. There's several more plumes that are going to be coming off and ejecting off the coast, off of the Cabo Verde Islands, cruising across the main development region. And look at this, by the end of the month, we've got another pretty large plume about to move offshore there. Now, usually as we hit July, mid to late July, the main development region starts to open for business because these plumes start to gain latitude and push off to the north as the ITCZ does the same and starts to eject clusters of thunderstorms and seeds into the main development region. Atlantic tropical activity, we've got plenty of time for things to heat up. Again, we're only 2.5 weeks into the season. Start to see a little more activity in July, and then, of course, August, especially mid-August, onwards through the middle of October is when we see the peak of our season. Climatologically, September 10th is the peak of the hurricane activity. Now, as we've seen, June is the hot spots is going to be in the Gulf. We're going to see things developing there. That's always a spot to look at as we already have the warm water. We've got the Western Caribbean that seems to be a hot spot in June as well. And then even off the southeast coast of the United States, the far southwestern Atlantic over the Bahamas is also a hot spot. But as we get ready to wrap up June, head into July, where can we look for development there? Well, pretty much the exact same areas. All right, the Gulf is still open for business. It's really open for business the entire season. The Western Caribbean is our number 2 hotspot. And then guess what the next hotspot is? Yep, the southwestern Atlantic once again. But we're going to add a 4th hotspot in July, around mid-July. The western main development region of the Atlantic basin starts to get more active, and we see seeds coming off the coast of Africa, hitting the waters there, and then taking some time to develop. But once they hit the western portions of the MDR, just ahead of the Leeward Islands and Windward Islands, start to see those spit out some tropical storms and hurricanes. So we'll see what happens this season if that proves correct. All right, coming up after a quick break, we're going to go visit the Pacific. As I mentioned, there's not much there, but we're going to check up on it when I see you again in just a minute. Welcome back to Hurricane Hub Live. A check on the eastern Pacific now. As I mentioned, there's not much going on there. There's what you can see of the satellite imagery of Arthur, but we've got some convection going on in the eastern Pacific, but nothing that's been tagged as an area of interest. Over here, well to the south and east of Hawaii, if we go back to the start of the plume, you see that there? That was tagged as an area of interest, had 20% chance on Monday. No longer is an area of interest there. As you can see, it just fell apart pretty much as it's moving into more of a stable air. We've got to update our scorecard today. The Atlantic 1. Arthur. And we've had 3. We had Amanda, Boris, and Christina out in the Eastern Pacific Basin, so the Eastern Pacific leads so far. We'll see where it ends up by the end of the year. Eastern Pacific names: Amanda, Boris, Christina already knocked off there. Douglas, Elida, Fausto, and Genevieve will be up next. Now, coming up after a quick break, we've got a press conference in New Orleans we're going to get you to, and to talk about the impacts of Arthur. See you after a quick break. Welcome back to Hurricane Hub Live. New Orleans city leaders urged residents to stay weather alert for potential flooding and other impacts from Tropical Storm Arthur. Let's listen into that press conference from officials outlining emergency response plans just a couple hours ago.
Thank you so much for being with us. We wanted to have a very quick briefing on Tropical Storm Arthur. Fortunately, it is looking less and less like the city of New Orleans will have significant impacts. But as we all know, we want to be ready just in case the scenario could change for us. So we're having this news conference today to tell you about the preparations that we're putting in place just in case that scenario should change for us and we would get a lot more rainfall that is currently predicted for us. First, let me just say that the Emergency Operations Center, that has been activated. It was activated this morning at 9 o'clock, and it will remain activated until 7 o'clock in the morning on Friday. Now, should we decide that it is no longer necessary to keep it activated all the way till Friday, obviously we will cut that time frame shorter. I was actually just at the EOC just a few minutes ago checking in on everyone, and all of the city departments are up there. They're starting to gather. Our public safety partners from GOSEP are also there as well. The EOC is equipped, as you all know, with different systems that monitor everything from our sewage and water board pumps to also, of course, a series of cameras across the city that monitor areas that are prone to flooding. So our EOC managers truly have their eye through either cameras or through other visual monitors across the city as to what exactly is happening throughout the city of New Orleans. As far as a city hall closure or closure of city departments, I will be in close contact with our emergency managers through this afternoon and through the evening to monitor impacts on the city of New Orleans and the amount of rainfall that we are getting. Now, obviously, if, like I mentioned before, if that scenario changes and we have significant impacts, then, obviously I will be doing a closure. I will make that call overnight sometime, likely after the 4 a.m. advisory tomorrow morning. And so that is where we're at right now. So I do want to say that overall, the way that we have been working has been a really great exercise, this first major storm, on what all of us need to be doing together. And this truly is a team effort. This is teamwork. And this includes, of course, our partners at the New Orleans City Council, who did a tremendous job working with our Department of Public Works team this morning on making sure that they set up sandbag locations. I can tell you that this process started yesterday afternoon into the evening, and by this morning, everything was deployed and ready to go for those sites to be activated at 9:30 this morning. I'm going to go through the run of show and then have each of the department heads who I asked to speak to please come forward. We will start with Michael Harrison, the Deputy Mayor of Public Safety, followed by Derek Hessen, the Director of NOSEM, followed by Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick with the New Orleans Police Department. Steve Nelson will follow. He's the Deputy CAO of Infrastructure, then followed by Dr. Jennifer Avegno, Deputy Mayor of Health and Human Services, followed by Randy Heyman, the Director of the Sewage and Water Board, followed by Matt Torrey, the Director of Sanitation, and we will end with Council President Morrell. So with that, Deputy Mayor Harrison, the show is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to all of you, all of our city, state, and federal partners for supporting our preparedness efforts. City of New Orleans has been preparing for this weather event and remains focused on ensuring our public safety agencies, our infrastructure partners, stakeholders are ready to respond should conditions warrant so. The city's public safety agencies, including NOPD, FD, EMS, and NOSEM, have been coordinating closely ahead of this event. Personnel, equipment, and resources have been reviewed and positioned to support response operation as needed. Earlier today, the City Emergency Operations Center transitioned to a Level 2 partial activation and moved to a 24-hour operations. This allows our city departments and our partner agencies to maintain situational awareness, to share information, to coordinate resources, and quickly address issues as they arise.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor for your leadership during this event. The Mayor has been engaged with NOSEM as we continue to monitor Tropical Storm Arthur. The system is forecast to make landfall near the Texas and Louisiana border tonight, and although that may seem like it's really far from the city of New Orleans, the storm is lopsided, and so those impacts will be felt far east from its initial landfall. The potential for significant flash flooding will be the highest this evening through Thursday morning, especially where rain and intense rainfall rates repeatedly move over the same locations. Outside of that time frame, New Orleans remains at risk for excessive rainfall on Thursday during the daytime hours and Friday, meaning localized flash flooding remains possible throughout much of this event. In addition to the flooding threat, a few strong storms could be capable of producing damaging wind gusts of up to 60 miles per hour and a few tornadoes. For residents, now is the time to prepare. Stay weather aware, especially tonight and into tomorrow. Have multiple ways to receive warnings and emergency information. You can text NOLA READY to 77295. Limit unnecessary travel during the periods of intense rainfall. Turn around, don't drown. Please don't drive through flooded roadways. And then also, if safe to do so, help clear some of those catch basins along your street or in your neighborhood to prevent that flooding from pooling around areas. We're not asking residents to be alarmed, but we are asking them to take this event seriously. New Orleans has prepared for events like this before, and NOSEM is actively coordinating with partners as conditions evolve. Thank you.
Stick around, Tropical Trivia is next. All right, it is time for tonight's tropical trivia question. Here it is. What was the last A-named storm to be retired? Was it Allison, Andrew? That was a big one, 1992, Andrew. Alicia or Agnes? What do you think it is? I'll have the answer for you tomorrow night on Hurricane Hub Live. Remember, we are here Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can scan the QR code to download the 13 News Now Hurricane Guide. It has information on supplies you should have on hand, emergency numbers you might need, and a whole lot more cool stuff to download. We'll see you back here tomorrow night at 8 p.m.